Clovis is a special little place. And I first got to know you a little bit. We don't know each other real well, but got to know you a little bit when I went to a couple of city council meetings. And the big one was May 8th, where Clovis decided to take a different path. And I think you were responsible because Clovis has a rotating mayorship, and you were mayor at the time, which meant, well, you don't have technically more power. You're the person that kind of controls how the meeting runs. So I think there's a power in that, and you did a good job with that. So I want to say thank you, but you want to tell that story of everybody else shut down. So we're going all the way back to March 18th, 2020. On May 8th, we had a meeting deciding what's Clovis going to do. Are we going to take the path that the rest of California took, or are we going to do something different? Did that give you enough of a setup?
Sure.
Okay.
When the COVID issue first hit, and I believe it was St. Patrick's Day, they went into restaurants, shut them down, everything locked down, and we were obviously uncharted territory. I wasn't alive in 1918 for the Spanish flu, so we as a city, and I think most Americans, went with the information we were being given. And there came a point, 3 weeks, 2 weeks to flatten the curve became right. 2 months. And there came a point where what they were selling, I wasn't buying. You had businesses. I had a local businessman reach out to me, and he said, "Drew, if I don't open back up, I'll never open back up. I will lose everything I have. I sell flooring. People only buy flooring once every 10 years. And if I'm closed, they're going to Home Depot, Lowe's, Costco, all the big box stores that were quote unquote priority stores."
They were essential.
Essential, as were marijuana dispensaries and liquor stores. And
strip clubs.
Yeah. And I said to him, open back up, wear a mask, socially distance, so that you can justify your actions in the event that you end up in court. But the city of Clovis isn't going to hassle you. Act reasonably, take precautions, go forth. And we had a lot of businesses open up, and because they weren't subject to state licensing, like beauticians, barbers, liquor, bars and restaurants, they didn't have to worry about people from ABC or Consumer Affairs coming in and citing them. We weren't going to mess with them. And you had groups of people that were very angry at us. You're killing grandma. Mm-hmm. And then the other groups going, thank you for realizing that people have a financial and ethical investment in their businesses, and they were going to go under. And so I advocated for our local businesses. I wrote letters to the governor for our beauticians and our hairdressers and our barber shops. There was a point where the governor was being lobbied to shut down gun sales and ammunition sales. And I wrote a letter to the governor imploring him not to do that. And to his credit, it's hard for me to say that, they didn't do it because it would have been the wrong thing. And so
we're in California, folks. Gavin Newsom has the ability to find the wrong thing. But occasionally, he has done something that's not horrible. What
they did to our restaurants and our bars. My son was a bar owner at the time. One of the bar owners. They were telling them, we're going to open, we're going to let you open. And then they would order the food, and then they would say, okay, we're extending that for 2 weeks. So
the food would be wasted.
Right. But they did let them sell out the door. Okay. And there came a point where businesses were operating like speakeasies, and they had a informant line. If ABC showed up or Consumer Affairs, everybody would call 5 people and go, "Hey, the revenuers are here," and they would all, make like nobody's home. And it's really bad. Well, I had a friend of a friend. He was 92 years old, kind of didn't like having his hair not in perfect condition, and he couldn't get a barber. And I had to call a local barber, and I had to basically do a drug deal to get this guy a haircut. And I had to do the same thing for an older lady. She kept saying, "I understand the churches are opening. My hair doesn't look good." And I hooked her up with a hairdresser. Why should we have to go to those lengths?
It was kind of crazy.
Oh, yes.
Well, I know that, what were there, 200 people that came to that meeting last night? Because the meeting May 8th, something like that, and 100 spoke or so. I was one of them. I only stayed till like 1. I don't know when it actually ended. There were still a bunch of people waiting to give their opinion on this.
And the bottom line is we have to listen to the input of the people who put us in office, and what we do or don't do has a direct result on their lives, either positively or negatively, or at the very least, maybe we can mitigate the harm that comes out of Sacramento and sometimes Washington.
Mm-hmm. Well, Clovis, I remember you basically, the verdict was 4-1 wanted to reopen. 1, I'm not even going to mention names, but refused to even give the reasons why. That was my big problem. I didn't mind that they thought we shouldn't reopen. I thought it was a complete and utter lack of leadership to go, "Oh, we shouldn't open," but I don't ever want to tell anybody why publicly, because I'm running for re-election. So we have somebody on the council that, yikes. But I'm going to leave it there because I don't want to draw you into the middle of that. It wasn't you.
No, it wasn't me. But it's important to hear what the people on the other side of an issue are saying, because I could be wrong.
Agreed. But if they won't give those reasons,
When
when they're vested in a position, yes, I know
Yeah.
privately it happened.
Yeah.
Publicly it did not, because they were worried about being reelected.
And
That's not okay.
if I ever get to the point where I worry about getting reelected, then I really shouldn't get reelected.
Yeah.
And that's the advantage of, we're not professional politicians. I'm not interested in higher office. I'm just saying I hadn't thought about it, but I'm really not interested in it. And I'm more effective as a local politician, because local politics is what keeps the water flowing, the toilets flushing, the cops and the firemen coming, keeps your streets in good condition. It's not done by the state or the feds.
Well, but again, the reason I call it Tale of Two Cities, because our sister city, Fresno, which we've essentially grown together and have a huge border with, they were closed for, in some ways, more than 2 years. Portions open, but they weren't fully open for more than 2 years. And Clovis was less than 2 months. Business thrived. Now, if those businesses couldn't have paid their property tax and you were getting no sales tax, how do you pay for emergency services? You don't. Dirty little secret people don't realize. About 40% of that committed budget comes from one of those sources and 40% from the other. It's a rough number. I know I'm not exactly right.
It's even less.
It's a little less? Okay.
Yeah.
Depends on who I talk to, from what city. It varies a little bit, but
right.
Somewhere in that range, a huge portion at least of emergency services funds come from property tax and sales tax.
Oh, I thought you were talking about, we get about 35 cents on every dollar for sales tax. Otherwise, it goes to everybody else who's got their hands out, and about 38 cents for property tax. So when
I just meant of that money now that you've gotten, the number you're talking about 40% comes from each one of those sources to
Right.
pay for emergency services. We're just looking at the same problem in a different way.
The bucket is about 70 plus percent for police and fire.
That's why I said about.
Yeah,
so
no.
I trust you to be closer to right than me on this one.
You were right.
So without that, if you don't have a safe city, you're done at ground zero. I mean, if people don't feel safe, it's not going to then be a productive city.
Correct.
And one of the great things about this city is, we have a chief, or former chief, and we have another former chief of police that understand law enforcement issues. By the way, you might have a little background there.
I do. I've been I was a police officer for over 40 years. When I went in the Army at the age of 18, I was in the military police. When I was discharged, I worked for the Department of Defense Police for about a year. Moved to California in 1980. Started as a cop in Santa Barbara. Wanted to own a home, so I moved here. I'm one of the few men that you're going to meet that had primary physical custody of their kids
While being an officer?
and got child support.
I mean, because an officer it's a huge responsibility, but also you have a tough schedule. Those are some long hours.
It was. I spent a very large portion of my 20s, 30s, and 40s sleep deprived, and you got to do the things you got to do.
Yeah.
And so when I moved up here, I started in Clovis in 1987, retired in 2009 as a captain, and I was happily retired for about 3 years, and I got approached to work at the airport police department, and I did. And then in 2014, I was approached for an interim police chief gig in Kingsburg. That was followed by Parlier, followed by Fowler, followed by Atwater, and then came back to the airport as the chief of police there.
Did you have to move or did you just commute to Atwater?
I had a room on the air base, and it was cheap. It was a 1-bedroom old officers' quarters. So I spent some nights up there, but it was a difficult environment. And sometimes having that hour and 15-minute decompression time to drive back was actually cathartic.
Well, I can understand that. Why do you think Clovis is unique? Because I truly believe this is a special place to live, safest place in the valley, good business environment. What combo makes that happen?
I think we have a high level of expectation from our citizens. They expect that when they dial 911, that there is a police officer and a firefighter at their door. When Clovis went through, and we've been growing exponentially for the last 4 decades, but we would have folks that would move from Fresno, and they would call for service, and we get there in 10 minutes. And they'd open the door, and they were shocked that, well, I wasn't expecting you. And I remember I looked at one of them, I said, "You just moved from Fresno, didn't you?" And they go, "Yeah." Well, because unfortunately, my friends at Fresno PD would come to work, and they get in the car and they look at the computer, and they had 90 calls. And so they had to go after the highest priority ones. So if you got somebody stole something from your yard, you waited 3 days, and they're doing significantly better. But that was a problem, and that one of the things that drove people to Clovis. The schools, we have an excellent school system, and and people take pride in being from Clovis. We get beat up for that sometimes. People will say, well, the Clovis way of life, and they'll make some disparaging remark.
Right.
That's nice.
Too bad for them. It's just jealousy.
Yeah. You know,
We have a sense of community.
Well, you know, it's funny because both of my sons played sports at Clovis High. And I'd be at the coast, and I went, oh, you know, I'm from Clovis. And they go, yeah, we hate Clovis. Why do you hate Clovis? Well, we didn't know where you guys were from, and your wrestling team showed up and just humiliated us. Your football team, your baseball teams. You know, we've had national championship teams at Buchanan.
And not just sports. Now they're in robotics,
Positively.
various arts.
The
Debate's pretty good teams some years.
I went to a wrestling match between Buchanan and Clovis, and my youngest was a Clovis High wrestler. Buchanan was the number 1 team in the state. Clovis was number 2 in the state, and it didn't get settled until the heavyweight match. And the thing is, these kids have been playing against each other since the 4th grade. They know each other. They like each other. I mean, there's that competitiveness, of course. But I've seen kids get out of Clovis Unified and become successful adults because they were challenged. You know, they were challenged to do excellent stuff, and they learned to do that. And so
with expectations, they had to rise to it.
Exactly. And I can tell you, as a 22-year police officer in Clovis, people have very high expectations. They appreciate it. They understand that with those expectations, we're going to pay well, because we want to be able to recruit people. And I can tell you, as a chief of police who worked for some smaller cities, there were a number of people who said to me, you know, I tested in Clovis and I didn't get a call back. And I wanted to say, I looked at your background. I know why you didn't get a call back. The bar was set very high, and it shows. You know, we have an excellent police department. We have excellent city employees.
I will attest to that. Anytime I've had questions, I'm referred to the right person, and I could ask any one of them and I get referred. I don't have to go to Andy, who's the city manager. I could go to any one of them and say, hey, I have this question. And they might say, well, no, this is the person you have to talk to. But then I actually get a phone call. And these things happened before I was on the Measure Y committee, before I was a very regular participant, at least I'm in the audience, at city council meetings.
One of the stories I like to tell is when I worked for another city, I needed to move something. And I asked a city employee, hey, could you help me move this? It was like from point A to point B. It was a little too heavy for me. I just needed an extra set of hands. And they said, yeah, I can't do that. Why? Because that's the other union's job, and I'll get in trouble for it. And I said, you know what, don't worry about it. I'll move it myself. And in Clovis, there have been times where I was working patrol, I'm driving down the street, and there's a piece of debris in the street. It's a hazard. I whip a U-turn to go back and pick it up out of the street, and a Parks vehicle had already stopped, and they were loading it on. They didn't say, I work for the Parks Department. That's the Streets Department problem. It's like, no, hey, this will only take me 5 seconds. I'm going to get out of the car, throw it in there, and they move on.
So that the employees have a sense of community pride also.
Yeah, and because they are given, that is the level of expectation that comes from the city government. It's easy to say it starts at the council. It does and it doesn't. But it starts at the city manager and department head level, where we tell people these are you are expected to go over and above. You know,
so the council, as long as they choose a city manager wisely, it would be like a school board choosing the right superintendent.
Well, because we're not there. I'm not there, but three Mondays a week. The people who are actually doing the work, if they haven't bought into the expectations, it's not going to happen. And then what it comes down to, that's when people get disciplined or fired. It's like, why didn't you do this? Well, it's not my job. Yes, it is. And so I have never heard from a city employee, that's not my job.
I know the attitude I get from some of them that I have just met randomly. Like, they don't go to city council meetings. They don't know me. The conversation I have, and I talk about Clovis, and it is very different than when I run into employees from other places. I hope you pay them a little better. Even though I want my taxpayer money saved.
That's not what you say at meetings.
No, that's Bill Scott.
I'm joking.
I don't say very much about pay. I just want to say, hey, are you using the money wisely? If you're getting somebody that is doing the best job possible and you're paying them a little more than average, they earned a little more than average.
When I was at as a chief of police, there's a course that you have to go to. And I'm down in San Diego, and at the time I was the airport chief of police. So it doesn't say where I'm from. And one of the people teaching the course started talking about a city up in the Central Valley that does things very well. And he starts talking about the Clovis Police Department. And one of the guys in the back of the room yells out to him, "Hey, Drew's the mayor of Clovis." And the guy looked at me and I went, "Yeah, I'm the mayor of Clovis." And he goes, "How do you guys do that?" It's bred into how we do things, because there's expectations, and I like it. It's great for the cops and the firemen and other employees, because we know that our citizens take pride in what we do too. Mm-hmm. When I worked for the university for 2.5 years, the job paid really well, but it was awful. They didn't really want me to be a police officer. And I'm talking these two young kids, and they look like Beavis and Butthead. I mean, one of them's wearing a Metallica shirt, the other one's wearing a Megadeth shirt. This is before Beavis and Butthead too. And this one guy's, he's Clovis cops are jerks, blah, 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 blah. And I'm waiting for the other one to chime in, and the other one goes, "Hey, man, you can say what you want." They're okay with me. I had some big biker dude trying to kick my front door down. He's drunk. I don't know the guy. He's at the wrong apartment. The cops, I called 911, and the cops got there right now. And that guy squared off on them to fight, and they kicked his ass. And he goes, "They're okay with me." And it kind of goes, I have my college degrees in public administration, and one of the things I read in a book was that a Republican is a Democrat who's been mugged. And I thought, that could be very accurate.
I know some people that it opened to their eyes.
That's right.
It's like the soldiers I know that have, been in a foxhole and been shot at. They might not have believed in God before. A couple shots at you, and it changes your perspective.
Yes.
Clovis has all kinds of interesting opportunities. I don't mean business opportunities. I mean, like, we've got a great senior center, which recently came on board. We've got an activity center kind of over just off of Clovis Avenue. Mm-hmm. There's a great veteran center. So there's a lot of opportunity, as well as a good business environment. But city council had a lot to do with that, because you working with a planning commission and having a vision moved us in a direction. That didn't all happen by accident.
No.
Can do you have any stories about one of those that pulled it together?
You know, if you look at what we're enjoying right now, was probably panned 15 years ago, or maybe even longer. Right now, we have a general plan amendment we're going through now, and that is the roadmap for 2050. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of the things that you see now were done in the past. When I was at the police department, one of the things for all of the businesses and the housing tracts and things like that, there's a checkbox at the police department where we look at a plan and we go, yeah, we don't like that. This needs to be this. Like, we had some developers wanted to put in stucco walls around their or even wooden walls around their complexes, and we said, no, you can't clean graffiti off a stucco wall. It needs to be this type of wall. And they would push back on us. But you don't make that decision. I make this decision. I don't decide whether or not this thing gets built, but you're not going to get a check off from us until you fix that. And, you know, they'll actually say, you think you can do that? Yeah. I've been empowered to do that. I was a corporal. I was a 2-stripe officer. But I knew that that's what the chief of police wanted. No. And it's like, well, you can go talk to him if you want, but I didn't make this up. This is the way we're doing it. We have a great camera system through the city, and one of our captains, Bob Keys, that was his deal, and we were able to work with Pelco when Pelco was still here, and we actually beta tested a lot of their stuff. We were a beta site. And we have but that caused, we had to have the infrastructure to put it in. Mm-hmm. So like with the recycled water, we did that years ago before all the cool kids were doing it. And it cost a lot of money, but when you're paying it in $1998 versus $2026, it's a much better deal.
Yeah, I'm sure. We just had something come on that I think is a huge deal. We've now got an interactive center with a drone there at the police station. Kind of blew me away. Basically, it's a room. One wall's a giant screen TV that can be split into multiple views. It's all connected to every one of the cameras. If a 911 call came in, you could just click on that address and information would be relayed to the nearest officer. It would go to his phone, his computer in his car, and you could connect it with his body cam if there was a reason. And there would be research without somebody having to do a whole bunch of typing. It's like AI is now assisting it. And this council's one of the ones that brought it together. Well, there was planning before that. I get that.
We approved it, but we have employees that are looking at all the time.
Come on, take all the credit.
Well, you know, I mean, I'll love to take credit for stuff like that, but because we hire smart people, yeah. And we tell them this is what we expect. And when you give your employees, whether you're in the private sector or in the public sector, when you give the people under you the authority to do their job, you lay out the expectations, and you may tell them, okay, you have the authority to make these decisions on this and this, come back and see me, we need to have a conversation. But we have, especially at the department head and the leadership positions, they are fire and forget people. You got it, go for it. Mm-hmm. You know, but there comes a point where we come in is they come to us with the price tag and they go, this is going to cost us. And And there are going to be times where we have to say no. But for the most part, we go, okay, we're going to find the money for this. We're going to reallocate this money, or we're going to have to go into reserve funds, which very rarely do we do. During COVID, one of the first things we did was move $2 million out of reserves into the general fund, just as a precaution, because we didn't know where the bottom of the pool was. About 3 months later, we put that money back, and we actually, with as much suffering that occurred during the COVID stuff, we came out kind of smelling like a rose. Our Costco was one of the top Costcos in the nation. I was told, and I don't know this factually, that our Lowe's was number one in the nation. People came to Clovis to shop.
Well, we were open.
Right.
And almost all the surrounding communities had at least severe restrictions, even if they were technically open. And they could come to Clovis, and they were so relieved that they didn't have to wear a mask. Now, a lot of people still chose to.
Yeah.
But they didn't have to. And if an individual business made a different choice, the business that I was in did not, but you could come and have like a piece of real life, as opposed to this draconian from the top down decision. In other words, local government stood against what I consider to be Gavin Newsom's tyranny. That's why it's so special what happened in Clovis to me.
Wait, there's a business downtown, Luna's Pizzeria.
Mm-hmm.
The former owner, they just recently sold it. Great guys, long-term 1960s business. When they moved here, and they're from New York, I'm originally from New Jersey, so we almost speak the same language. When they moved here, they were told, yeah, Italian's not going to fly here. And great food, great people. During COVID, they had to open up to the outside, and there was an older couple in their 80s. It was hot. He let them go inside and have their meal, and they got cited by ABC. And he called me, madder than a wet hen, and I said, you're going to have to deal with ABC for their stuff, but I can guarantee you the district attorney of Fresno County is not going to prosecute you criminally, because they're going to see what's the letter of the law, what's the spirit of the law. Were you letting everybody in? No. I let these older folks in because they were having difficulty with the heat. There comes a point where you have to do the right thing. And I think we always try to do that. There's going to be times where we get our hand forced. But if we have the ability to make a logical decision, we train our people, they know how to do that.
Well, Clovis, my one objection to all the success in Clovis is it keeps getting bigger, which means traffic gets a little worse. But I do think that I'm blessed, and I'm lucky that I made the choice about 20 plus years ago to move to Clovis. I lived in an apartment for a long time. I'm now in a house, thank goodness. I'm in the ghetto of Clovis, which is really pretty good. I'm in the southwest corner. That's,
no.
I jokingly call that the ghetto. But
I know where you live. And that's one of the things I think. Here's the downside of the district model that we're being forced into. When we had with Southwest Clovis.
So I'm just going to I'll take it from you for just a second.
Okay.
So we were at large, meaning all 5 members were elected by every resident of Clovis, and we recently went through a court battle, or we avoided the court battle.
Right.
And complied. Now you're talking about districts, so
right.
Yours.
We were forced through lawsuit to do what every other cities were forced to do. So now we have districts. Now, the downside of districts, at least from my perspective, is if you lived in Southwest Clovis, you could call 5 people instead of just one. And I can absolutely positively know this. We all had a heart for our older neighborhoods because the way things changed. In the 1960s, the expectation was you're going to play in your backyard because mom didn't work. There's when you look at Clovis, south of Clovis Avenue, there's really only one park, San Gabriel Park. When I was at the police department, I had a park built at Holland and Helm because the kids in the apartments had no place to play. And so that land is pretty much maxed out. And I will take credit for this. We started putting in more trails down in Southwest Clovis to connect people in their neighborhoods so that people could go for a walk. Mm-hmm. It will improve it. The kids can use it to go to school. It improves the walkability of the neighborhood, and it improves the values in the neighborhood. And we did one over by Peach and Ashland. We have other plans. There's going to be one behind Letterman Park, and I'm very happy.
I've walked that canal, but it wasn't technically open. I had to jump some fences.
Yeah, but we worked, and our
city
friends
fences, not people's fences.
Our friends at the irrigation district really helped us because that's their land. They could have said, "Nah, thanks a lot. It's too bad to be you." And we have a master trails agreement now, and I was driving force behind it, and staff did the work. And I'm hoping that as we go into the 2030s, that we will have a long-term plan for Southwest Clovis because when you're in a herd, you're only as fast as the weakest and slowest gazelle. We need to grab those folks up, and we need to make Southwest Clovis a place where people go, I can buy my first house there. My kids will go to Tarpey.
Well, depends on which portion.
No, you're right.
Because I'm technically in the portion that is Fresno schools.
Oh.
But I don't have kids, so it's okay.
Okay. And
I have the right cops.
I'm meeting tomorrow with someone connected to the county education. And we've had these conversations because we have good folks that they feel, I think, a little left behind because it's when we talk about Clovis Unified and we don't have a Fresno school in Clovis. Viking is on the other side of Winery. But we need to help them too. Just kind of a funny story. When I worked for the police department, 3 a.m, we'd be out there with our cars blacked out looking for people who are stealing cars or burglarizing cars. And we'd stop them and they'd say, hey, I'm in Fresno. You can't mess with me. And we go, no, Clovis starts at Winery. No, Clovis starts at Willow. And we'd point the sign out and go, you see the brown sign with the bucking bronco on it? You see the green sign? That's Clovis, that's Fresno. Brown means turn around, green means go, you're not going anywhere. And they would go, well, if I knew I was in Clovis, I wouldn't come over here because you guys are jerks. Yeah, we are.
I'm right there with you. When I first moved in my house, I had a different neighbor, and her kid often got in trouble. We had a failure to appear. They didn't consider him dangerous, and the only reason I'm saying this is because I drove into my little cul-de-sac, and all of a sudden there were 9 Clovis PD, 10 officers. So I'm thinking, well, I pull up, and one of them walks out, and I said, do I need to go home? Or do you need to go do something else for a while? They're like, nah, we just wanted to make sure there were no problems. We weren't really expecting any, but, we had a bunch of people nearby, and we knew it'd only take a few minutes, so we just gathered them up.
I've had people, why does it take 3 police officers to do that?
So that there's safety, so that you actually intimidate people so that there's not the bad behavior. It's safer for everybody.
And sometimes you have a trainee, so the trainees don't really count. They're
In this case, I couldn't tell.
right. And it could be when I was a sergeant, I showed up on calls because I was watching my people do their jobs to make sure that they had everything they needed. And if by chance somebody was going down a path that I go, hold, time out, we need to have a conversation. Or when people said, I demand to talk to your supervisor, they go, he's right back here. And they go, oh, because they can't make up a story about all the
Right.
things that I didn't do that. I saw you do it.
Right.
And I enjoyed working for the Clovis Police Department.
We're down to about 3.5 minutes. Are you running again?
I am. I stopped raising. Running for office requires you to ask people for money. I hate asking people for money, and so I got to start fundraising. It costs. You can't just leg out a campaign anymore. Because they've changed. Everybody gets a ballot now. So
Right.
with that, you got to have a mailer that goes out either the day before or the day that the ballots get there. So you got to have money to do that. Now the advantage with district is I only have to walk 20% of the city.
Yeah.
When I ran the first time, I knocked on 2,500 doors.
And that probably wasn't even anywhere enough.
Oh no. I got 68% of the vote, and I was fundraised almost 3-1, and I had a 10-second spiel when I walked up to a door. You knock on the door, and people answer the door, and they look like, "Who is this?" And I'd say, "I'm not selling anything. I'm running for city council. All I need is 10 seconds." And they go, "Give me your 10 seconds. I'm a veteran. I'm a retired police captain. I want to continue to serve this community. I would appreciate your vote." And they would go, I go, "See, 10 seconds, first political promise kept." And they would always say, I'd hand them my thing and said, "I appreciate your consideration." I would walk away and they would say, "Good luck." And I would stop and turn around and I would say, "Luck favors the prepared. That's why I knocked on your door." And I had one man, we talked for probably 10 minutes.
So it wasn't too bad.
No, that was great. When I was on the air board,
Yeah.